Okay, so we're going to create some trees in this video, and you can use what you learn here for other types of foliage as well. But overall, GR doesn't need a lot of detail for the trees. Matter of fact, the level builder PDF file recommends no more than like 150 polygons per tree. Um, so keep that in mind. All right, I may be teaching you a little bit of a wrong technique or method here. I'm going to explain that in just a moment, but just keep in mind that when you create a mission file, you can set the amount of wind on the trees. And if you set it too high, the way I'm teaching you right now, it may break the tree and it may not actually look right in game. I'll talk more about that as we get to it. But so we're going to start with a new scene. We're just going to delete everything. Now, there's actually an add-on. If you go to Edit Preferences, Add-ons, you can find sapling tree generators. So if you just look up sapling tree gen, go ahead and enable that and then save your preferences there. Press Shift A. You'll see under Curve, you can actually create sapling tree gen. Now, this thing can be a little bit confusing. All of your options to modify a tree are right here on the bottom left. But the moment you go to move or you click by accident, or of course it won't disappear now, but you make a selection or something, it disappears. You can't modify this anymore. You'll have to blow it away and delete it, press Shift A, and create sapling tree gen again. This is where it gets a little bit confusing because that can happen at any point, and when you're making adjustments to the tree itself, it disappears. You no longer have those settings anymore, and you'll be having to start all over. It's a little bit annoying, but you can get around that a little bit because what you do is you quickly set up the tree the way you want it to look, and then you just save it as a preset. So you'll type in some kind of name preset, whatever, and then export preset. And what'll end up happening is, and this is very easy to mess up, is you can load a preset, and then a lot of times you might still have the word in here, and you might accidentally hit export preset again, and it might erase or override your preset. So keep that in mind. It's a little finicky to use, but it's not too bad. It has some presets though. You can see here we got like a small pine, Japanese maple. We got all kinds of different little trees that we can work off of as a base. There's certainly nothing wrong with doing that, and I actually recommend it. But I want to talk about the tree um, settings for the most part. And so what I'm going to do is use just the one we started with here, which is the I don't even know how to say it, Solisterman or something like that. So nonetheless, for GR's purposes, we don't need a lot of polygons. If you take a look at this guy, I'm turn the wireframes on. It has a ton of polygons. And if I go to statistics, you'll see we're at 14,000 faces. GR wants 150 roughly. You can certainly go more. I've tried trees at 3,000 polys. They came into the game just fine, but I think if you add a bunch of those onto a map, you'll probably run into some problems there. So, um, but more importantly, what it's really doing is it's creating splines, and it's setting depth to all the different splines when you're creating a tree this way. So if we take a look at it just from the base here, you can see that it's all a bunch of splines in edit mode. You can kind of bend these around and move them around. And we're going to convert it to a mesh later on. But in GRs, let's talk about that little issue you might run into using this method. A lot of these splines just start inside of another branch somewhere. And, you know, sometimes they'll even poke through a little bit here or there. The thing in GR is when you have wind blowing, I believe it goes off of the vertex or the vertices itself, and it modifies the mesh so that it has that swaying motion. And you might end up with this kind of a result if you have a lot of wind, where these branches kind of separate, and it'll do something like that. So keep that in mind. I may be teaching you a little bit of the wrong way. So if you're not going to use the tree generator, the easiest method, of course, is creating a cylinder. You know, you can use 4 or 6 sides or 8 sides to it. So vertices, I'm going to put at 6. And this is really not that hard. All you're going to do is, you know, go to side view, hold down control and right click, and start making your tree the way you think it should be put together. And, you know, of course, scale and everything else. So this is kind of the older school technique here, creating trees. The control right click to extrude like that is really useful for this. But you can certainly do all kinds of fun things. Now, the GR characters in game are roughly 2 meters tall. So remember, these little squares here in the grid are a meter each. So usually just a little over 2 meters high. And try to keep the base, it doesn't have to be perfectly straight up and down. You can actually make it pretty wide and whatnot. But, you know, just something that looks a little bit more natural is useful. And last but not least, if you're going to UV map this guy, I want to talk about it. You're going to set the end of your branch to whatever size you want, but you're actually going to delete the top face. And normally you won't see this top section in the game. So if you fill it later, it's not really all that bad if the UV map is missing on it. But I want to show you how you can break this down. So when you delete that top face and the bottom face, for that matter, you can select one whole row of edges here, and you can just simply right click and do a marked seam, select the whole thing, press U and unwrap. If you go to UV editing here, you'll see how it breaks that down like so. Not really a bad deal. You could technically use this, but if you wanted a tileable or tiling texture for the entire width, the circumference of this trunk, what will end up happening is as you try to position this, it's going to get kind of irritating. What you need to do is flatten one of these out. And we'll do the base here. So we're going to go right click and we're just going to click straighten. And we're going to do that on all of the different sides here. So we're only going to do one face, select that face, right click, and then do follow active quads. Sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't. It'll do this number. And it's probably because I didn't have it straightened out all the way. I swear it was straightened out, but oh, you know what? You got to do align auto. That's it. Sorry. Don't straighten, align auto. All right. Now you can do follow active quads and it'll straighten it all out. So yeah, if you watch some of my previous videos, I actually figured this out now, how to use that and make that happen. And so whichever way your tiling texture is represented now, you can pretty much just scale it up, get it close to where it needs to go. And if you want it to be perfect, press N, select one whole edge. So on X, it'll be 0. And on the other side here, it will be 1. Or whatever the case may be. It might be, if you load a texture in, it might be like 256 or 512 or 1024 or something. But nonetheless, this is UV mapped appropriately now, and it's almost perfect the way I just did that. In the rare instance you do want to have branches spread apart, you're not going to use the sapling tree generator. What you will do is you will press Control B and then V, and you can bevel out a section like so. Personally, I delete the face right off the bat, grab it like so. I'll go to the side, and I will right click and smooth out a little bit. Actually, press E first time you do this, and then right click. And then you can go around and do whatever kind of branches you want. Okay. And you'll have something like that. And then you can move these around using proportional editing, something you might want to do when you do that. If you have a lot of branches coming out, turn proportional editing on. And if you do connected only, if there's branches next to it, it won't affect it. It'll only do the mesh that you're actually wanting to work on. So it will do this number where you can set your size. You can bend only your branch, so the other branches nearby won't be affected. Pretty useful. So if I was to add another loop, you can see that once we do this once, it kills the loop system. So you can't really cut loops too well. You just have to use the knife tool to finish them off. But let's say we have another one over here. We're doing the same thing. I'm going to flatten this out. Turn proportional editing off real quick. I want to flatten this out based on the normal. So I'm going to press S and then Z and flatten it. Try to roughly flatten it out. Okay, delete it face. Okay, and sometimes you'll be at a weird angle where you can't go into like just a straight orthographic mode and do anything. So sometimes I'll just try to line it up the best I can, and I'll just start doing whatever, something like so. and that's usually pretty useful as well. So this is manually modeling trees. And then I just wanted to explain that proportional editing um, connected only part real quick. I just wanted you to see it. If I was to start moving this as is, you can see it affects everything, right? When I do connected only, it's only going to affect probably the base and the branch itself. So make it smaller so it doesn't affect the base. But now it won't affect the other branch. So I can move this all around this other branch over here and even put it intertwined with it. It really wouldn't matter because as I modify this, it's not really affecting that other branch. Whereas if that option was off, you can see it does both of them. So keep that in mind. It's pretty useful. That's not what we're going to be doing though in this video. What we're going to be doing, I'm going to start a new scene anyways. Just select everything, delete it. Shift A, create curve, sapling, tree gen. We're going to play with some settings. I'm going to explain them real quick. GR in general, you don't need a lot of branches. You don't need to add the leaves using the sapling tree generator. So you want to pay attention to your wireframe though. I kind of broke away from this conversation earlier, but you'll see that there's a lot of polys here it's using. There's no need to have that many. We're at 14,000 faces. So there's quite a few different settings that will actually change the polygon counts as you use it. So you got curve resolution. You can see you can bump that down and the curve resolution goes down. I find that one is pretty useful to bump down to like 1. You have the bevel resolution as well, which is going to be like the roundness of each branch. So you can bump that up or bump it down. Once again, 0 to 1 is really optimal for GR. You can see we're at 3,000 faces right now. And if we bump it down one more, it's at 2,000. So it gets rid of like 1,000 right there. Now there is a lot of, you can orbit, by the way, when you're doing this. If you try to select it though, look at what happens. So normally what I like to do is select it. I'll go back, create a curve, sapling, tree gen. The idea is just to so I can orbit around it. But so we're going to bump those curves down, and under branch radius, you also have another bevel resolution. This is for the smaller branches, so you can bump that down to 0, or you can keep it at 1. But 0 is nice too. Things like that. There's all these different menu options. Pruning is so you can kind of shape the tree as if it was cut by a gardener or something. So maybe you're doing a garden. You want to make it look like it's been trimmed up a little bit. Kind of adjust the settings a little bit on that and get different results. Change the width so we can cut it inwards. And yeah, it's a little weird to get used to some of these. Prune base. Maybe you want there to be a base to it. For whatever reason, it's actually not pruning it. Oh, prune ratio. There we go. So there you go. You can see you can kind of make it look like it's cut and trimmed up. I personally don't have much use for it. I don't create too many prune trees, so just something I wanted to mention. Leaves we're not going to touch in this because I'm going to show you kind of a way to do it through Photoshop. But you can model a single leaf and then have it scatter on all of the branches. I don't like the way it works personally, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. Geometry here, the first menu usually. I want to explain something. So like this is probably the only part of the sapling tree generator where it says anything. It says custom branch lengths, base, middle position, and top. It's more or less like the main trunk, the branches that come off, and then the smaller branches that come off, and then the very smallest of branches, which is what the top is. So every time you see these menus, you have it going down like this. This is the trunk. This is the next set of branches. This is the next set of branches, and this is the next set of branches. Because we're using such a small curve ratio and bevel ratio, and we're going to be changing things up to be very minimalistic, we're only going to be really utilizing the 2 here. So it's going to be base, like the trunk, and then the first set of branches. You can use this generator to create more complicated pieces. You can use this to create alpha channel maps, alpha channel sets of branches, which is what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to do that, but I just want to go over the menu options here real quick. Okay, you have some other things like branch rings and all kinds of fun stuff. Don't get too caught up in all these menu options. You can play with them and get used to them, but it's really, you don't need to know all of them. You can see that right now doing custom shape really doesn't do much, so don't worry about that. We're going to go to branch radius. This is actually pretty straightforward. We have like a radius scale. You can make them thinner or thicker, and it treats the trunk as a branch as well. So you can make you can kind of tweak them around a little bit in the ratio, so you can make them thinner at the top or fatter at the bottom, and just kind of balance them however you see fit. Personally, I wouldn't make them too thin at the top. I don't think so. I don't think that works too well. You also have a root flare, so the trunk, you can make it flare out a little bit. All right, that's something to keep in mind. The minimum radius, I like to put it at 0.02. That's just something personally I like to do. You can go as small as you want, but I'm going to get it kind of set up like so. All right, now, close tip. You can cap all the tips by clicking close tip, and it'll actually make them a little single vertex, but don't do that because it's going to mess up your UV mapping. So keep that in mind. It's automatically UV mapped. You don't have to go UV map all this. It's automatically, for the most part. We'll get into that in a sec. Branch splitting is where all the magic really happens, in my opinion. You can see there's different levels. If I bump it down to level 1, not much is going on. Level 2, a little bit more. Level 3, oh, look, it gets even crazier. So level 1 is what I would recommend using for GR. And keep that in mind because you really only need the trunk. You don't need all these additional extra branches. Base splits is like how many times it's going to split in the trunk area. So if you bump it all the way down to 0, you can see it does that number. I mean, you can split it as many times as you need. 0 is usually what I would do, and I think that's pretty useful. Hold on, I was just checking something. Branch splitting. Oh, the base split, yeah. So yeah, you can bump it down. You can see it's still splitting for 1. Thought you could get rid of that. Maybe there is a way, I don't remember. But the number of branches here is kind of the way this goes. How many you really want? I believe. So you'd have to be at level 2 for that, I think. It's going to kind of tweak things in weird ways. I got some setting here kind of messed up. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, so that base split there. Branch radius. Let's go to geometry again real quick. Trying to figure out what it's doing. So there is a segment splits. This might be what I'm looking for. No, that's not it. Oh, it's the split height. There it is. I'm sorry. I was looking for this. So you can change the split height and you can see how this affects it. If you put it down at 0 or you bump it up higher and higher, it'll split like so. That's what I was looking for. And so, you know, tweak it however you see fit, and you can get some pretty good, interesting results. Also, curve resolution right here. This is another one. You can change the curve resolution that'll affect your ultimate polygon counts there. You can see how that goes. Once again, GR, you don't need a lot. So you might only want like eight to, low numbers here, extremely useful. All right, so we're making more or less just a really kind of a stick. That's what we're doing right now. Branch growth, you can change things like the curvature. So you can do kind of make things sway around, change the curvature to them. Curvature variations, you can do down angle. That's not having any effect. This one might though. Also the length. You can change the length. So maybe you want it real short and stocky, and you want these to be long. So that's another interesting aspect there. You can also have like back curvature and just different settings all around where you can play around with it. I'm gonna set it. Got something funky going on right here. I don't know what's going on exactly. So it's probably in the branch radius somewhere. Okay. So yeah, more or less what it's doing is it's creating another branch out of the top of the main branches. Uh, very, very interesting. Actually, I haven't had that happen yet. Like not like that, anyways, where it's just slightly noticeable, but it's there. All right, let's just save this real quick. We're gonna save this as PZ export preset. You'll see now that we have done that, we can always load up PZ. Also, there's a seed variation. Um, you can see random seed. You can actually just bump that around, and it'll give you some different results. So you can rapidly, make different trees with different base meshes. It's pretty cool. It works well. Um, branch distribution. Yeah, it's not working too well there. So, all right. We're going to leave this one as is. I like it being kind of whatever this shape is. It's kind of cool. So I'm going to actually press G, Y. We're just going to move it over for now. I'm going to use it in a second. I want to make the actual branches that come off of it using the tree generator again. So I'm going to do sapling tree generator. We could use a high detailed one to start with, or we could use the one we were already messing around with. Personally, I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to bump it around a little bit, kind of modify it. So I'm going to go back to branch splitting. The base splits, I only want one. Levels at 2 is okay, but I want to have it. I want it to. Let's go to branch growth. I don't want it to have a down angle, and the down angle does this number. So what I really want is it to kind of point up at the sky a little bit more, and not have too much variation. The length, we could make it really long. I don't want to though. I mean, something like that might be all right, but I want it to look like a branch. You see, you can change the curvature and all that too. I don't want much curvature. I don't want much down angle. All right, so it's pretty close. Let's go back to branch splitting. You can add as much as you want or as little as you want to it. You can see that I had variation for segment splits on this one at 0.10, so it creates two. If you turn that off, it's only going to create one. At least I think so. Yeah. It's a little too narrow. There's too many branches in the middle here. Let's go back to branch growth, and we're going to do outward. Oops, sorry. Branch splitting. Outward attraction. Yeah, we're going to bump those up. Oh, I didn't do much, did it? Rotation. Nope. Split angle. Let's see if we can't use that for a second. And now we can change the curvature. Perhaps. Yeah, it's not what I'm going for. Yeah, that's crazy, huh? See how crazy you can get with this thing? Yeah, so that's a lot of curvature, but I don't need that much. I do want a little bit. I want it to be mostly believable too. And that variation might be making things a little bit worse. I kind of like this because what's going to happen is we're going to throw this onto these branches over here, these basic ones. But I don't want them to be so long. So we're going to do length. We're going to shrink. We're going to shrink some of this somehow. I don't like some of these branches. Turn that bevel ratio down real quick. Yeah, I would think these ones pointing down you could change right here, but they're not. They're not changing. I need to figure out which ones do that. Oh, those ones. Curvature is doing it, I guess. I don't want it wound up into a ball either, though. So let's see. Let's do. I don't need that many. First of all, split angle. Yeah, something a little bit more like that, I think, would be just fine. It's not quite what I want, so I might change the seed and get some different results. See, that's real nice right there. I like that one a lot. And then you see how this said, it still says Peasy. You need to change the name and do that before you accidentally press export. You'll find yourself doing that quite a bit. And you'll overwrite your original. So now we have this one, then we have this one. It remembers the seeds as well, so you can always just, as long as you're using the same seed, write down your favorites and you can go back to those anytime you need them. So that looks pretty good for a branch, I think. One thing for branches I can highly recommend you doing though is the overall base radius here. I would make it, the minimum radius is fine at 0.2, but the no, no. See, like I said, you'd lose it. It's good to save them. Sapling tree gen. Okay, so now we just go load it back up. See, I might even export that by accident, so be careful. Yeah, there we go. I want to get the trunk area to be as minimal as possible. Making them a little thicker than you would think would be okay is all right, because what's going to happen is it'll give you a better alpha for GR. And branch radius, I know I changed that last time and it really screwed me up, but I want to make them thinner at the trunk. Yeah, something like that. As thin as possible almost. Not, really it's a bad idea to make them thin as possible, but let's change the ratio up just a little bit. No. Hmm. See this taper here? Um, you can make it taper if you want. I don't think it's required though. Tweak radius. Hmm. Yeah. I want them to be I want them to be like uniformly thick, but I want that base just a little thinner. I can't get it thinner now. Where was the root flare? Let's change that. Oh, that doesn't go below 0. Dang it. I guess we'll make them all a little bit thicker and we'll turn the ratio down. So we end up with kind of a uniform almost thinness to all of them. You can make this one as high poly as you want. It doesn't matter. So if you want to bump up the bevels, you can do that. If you want to bump up anything, you can bump it up. So the bevel ratios, the curve ratios, you name it. You can also change the splitting amounts too. So if you want to have 3 levels, you can do that. If you want 2 splits or whatever, do as you see fit. You can add as many or as little as you want. All right. Yeah, so you can even do that if you wanted. The curve resolution there. Let's do, I kind of like those too. That's a good one. That's real good, I think. I look at it from a couple different angles real quick, because what's going to happen is we're using it as our texture. And I like to have it be mostly uniform looking, but I like a little bit of variation to it as well. So like having a branch stick out real far on one side is okay. That doesn't bother me because normally I'm going to render it something like that. But occasionally you might want to render this one too. And this is real uniform looking, so I like that a lot. All right. Uh, Saving it. PZ branch, export preset. You'll notice that it deletes one and it replaces it. So there you go. We have it now set up. Why I did all this, we're going to hide this one by pressing H. We have to do a couple things. We have to turn the grid off, turn origin off and 3D cursor real quick. Or you could just turn it all off, to be honest. Probably would have been useful to mention that. So you could leave all that on. You don't have to turn that off right now, unless, I mean, if you're just going to press that, you can turn it off. Probably the better way to do it. Find an angle you like and zoom in as far as you can. Trust me when I say zoom in as far as you can. We're going to render this. And it's going to be really quick too. So under the render settings, go to film, click transparent. This is going to create an alpha map. And now when we go to view, viewport, render image, it'll render the image real quick. And you'll see here, color and alpha. Under alpha, we have an alpha map generated, which is really useful. But it's also transparent. So if you save it in PNG file format, it's there. So we're going to do branch 01 and save it in PNG. Just save it. You can certainly spin this again if you want, so you have a little bit more of a different look for a branch, or you can make another type of branch where it's real thin. Whatever the case may be, you can actually just come in here and start modifying it. Turn your options back on, but you could certainly come in and press L and select whole branch sets, and take them and just straight delete them. You don't necessarily need them, and you'll see it does that number. Why it's not deleting everything, I don't know though. Should be. All right, I guess not. Nonetheless, to turn it into a mesh, it's real simple. In object mode, just go to convert to mesh, and what'll happen is it switches it all over to mesh. So you can continue refining it from here if you wanted. You can delete these vertices. Make sure you delete any of the corresponding limbs. You can prune it and cut it up, do whatever you want with it, but make sure you delete everything. It's going to leave some dots behind. Just snag them, delete them. Might have to go into X-ray mode. So Alt-Z, X-ray, delete. Oh, it's still not deleting that one. It should be deleting it though. Yeah. So it's a little bit frustrating to manually do it, but so let's say I don't want this branch, this branch, this branch, this one's on this one. So select that whole section, all the vertices. You can also do select all by trait, loose geometry. You can delete all those like so. This one's technically loose too now, so we'll do that. All right. So this isn't the prettiest of branches for sure. delete it like that. So we got something more like that right now. Not too bad. Let's go and render viewport render image. Save it. I'm going to do branch 02. So I'm going to leave one of these as a dead branch, and the other ones are going to be with leaves on it. All right, so we can actually, once you're done with the branch, you can get rid of it. Press Alt-H, bring back your trunk. In this case, here's our trunk. You can see how this is really super simple for GR. This is not a crazy tree at all. It's at 116 faces already. You can go back and you can actually do the same thing here. Select. Let's see if we can do it. Select. Oh, we didn't convert it to mesh yet. So yeah, let's go object. Convert to mesh. Select all by traits. Got to do it in edit mode. Loose geometry. I guess there's only one piece of loose geometry, which is that bottom. Oh no, that's the origin point. Never mind. All right. So we're pretty much good to go. Now, if you don't remember this, there's a plugin comes with Blender. All you have to do is go to options, add-ons, edit preferences, add-ons, and turn it on. It's called import images as planes. Turn that on and you can just go straight in here, import images as planes. I'm not changing any settings, just click in branch 1. There we go, we got that in. It's over here. I'm going to press G and Y and just move it over. I'm going to do import images as planes. I'm going to do branch 2. I'm switching this over to texture. So now you're going to see that these are actually transparent. They're going to get lost real quick, in my opinion, with the grid. So I turn the grid off real quick. We can prep these real simple. We're going to turn on correct face attributes, keep connected. We can actually move vertices around now, and it won't change the position of anything. Sliding without turning that on will also make it work pretty good, but I just want to roughly get it kind of cropped up, more or less. You could cut a more detailed shape if you need to, but it's really not required. Doing the same thing here. And if you do, in fact, just end up moving it, as long as those settings are on, you're not going to mess it up. Keep attributes settings. We're not quite done yet. We need to actually turn those back off. We need to set the origin points real quick. So just shift right click right at the end of it. We're going to go to object, set origin to 3D cursor. Okay. Shift, this is an object mode, shift right click right at the end of it. Make sure it's the 3D cursor's there. Object, set origin to 3D cursor. Now to get these to snap, what we're going to do is we're going to turn our snap settings into volume and center. What'll happen here now is these will work real nice to create a tree. So I want these ones to be at the top. These will be at the bottom. And we can press G, hold control, and we'll snap now. I start top and go to the bottom. That's usually what I do. So I can press G and hold here. And I can just lift it right on up like so. And it should be snapping to the very center in that area. Okay, you can make it larger. You can duplicate it and then rotate it. Rotation, don't use global, use local. You can always switch back to global by just pressing the axis twice. So Y twice, will shift it around. But um, sometimes you want to have them spin in certain ways, and it's better to have it set to local. You can see I can spin it like so and double it up, which is pretty useful. And then you can scale it a little bit larger, and then you'll have this really cool look to it. So you make one big, one large, or one small, one large, and you can go around and do that to a bunch of this real quick. So we'll do the same here. We'll position it. I'm just rotating without defining an axis, so it gives me kind of like a random result somewhat. It's based on the view though, so it's kind of random, but not really. So I might just press Shift D, rotate on Y, make it larger, like so. You can see how quick that works, right? It's super fast, it's effective. And this is why you leave these kind of thick at the end, because you want this branch to match. You want it to match the same width of that area. It's going to be pretty far away when you're on the ground looking at it, so it's not a big deal. But you can do this real quick. Now this is kind of the way GR's created all of its trees. It's almost exactly the same. So keep that in mind. You can take both of them, duplicate them, and then just snap it as well. You don't have to do one at a time unless you really want to. You can even duplicate it and then just rotate it in a direction. You can do things like that. Scale it smaller or larger. Rotate it however you want. We're going to do another one right here. We're going to make this one smaller and rotate it out like so. Looking pretty good, right? It's not too bad. I'm going to turn wireframe off. It makes it harder to see it, but you will end up, if you use that snapping method, if you're trying to snap and there's a branch in the way, it'll snap to the branch instead of the trunk. So that's why I like to work down instead of working up. I think it just works out better that way. So I always have a clean slate, and inside to outside as well is useful. But I almost always have a clean slate to work with. So now I can just do, I can make these go out a little wider. Snap it here, rotate on Z. Okay. I want to do one more on the inside. So let's snap one here. Yeah, like that. There we go. You can see it doesn't have too bad of coverage either. If for whatever reason, you feel like you're not getting the coverage you need, you can just rotate them slightly and get them to fill out the area a little bit better. Something like that. Make sure you select both of them though. Yeah, so sometimes you'll get a little better coverage when you do that. So if you're looking up through the canopy of it, it doesn't look too barren or anything. And you can also get pretty crazy with this. Like you could really make quite a few of them. You can see right now we're at 135 faces, so we have room to go. 150 is the target. You can go above it if you really wanted, but 150 is that target. So this is the other one down here. I want this one to just be kind of in here. In different areas. It can even be pretty low. It doesn't really matter. But I just want it around. Scale one larger. Make one smaller. So yeah, some things like that, right? So we're going to do the same thing over here. Push it out that way. Do the same thing over here. And push it back inwards a little bit. See how that works? So you can do this real fast if you're not talking the whole time and kind of mess it up playing with the settings, yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's a tree now. That's something you can use in game. I'm going to hide my base down there, my one little piece. You can certainly use this in game. It's going to look pretty good. If you wanted a dead tree, it's not too bad. Trick here is the base. You know, you're going to have to create your collision object. So usually just a cylinder. I would do no more than 6 sides personally, but you could do 3 if you really wanted to. You know, 3 would work as well. I'm just going to do 6. Shift Z, move it over. Remember the collisions. The collision. If I can speak, look at it in a side view real quick with the grid on. Each square is a meter, so it's 2 meters. Really, you only need a meter high, but you know, once you get that in there, scale it appropriately so that covers the bottom of it. And that's it. You got your collision system, your invisible wall barrier, and you have the tree modeled and created. And so now you can just create different trunks, and you would just use these same pieces, and you can create variations of trees real quick, which is awesome. Last but not least, I said I was going to show you how to put leaves on this and whatnot. Oh, before we get to the leaves, this trunk, remember I said it was UV mapped already? It actually is. It really is. So I'm going to go create a new material, and we're going to do base color, image texture. Use a seamless trunk texture for this. So I just have a wood texture right now. This isn't seamless, so I can't use that, but I'm going to use this wood texture. And you'll see that when it comes in, it's really stretched out. It is UV mapped, it's just not scaled correctly. So in the UV editor window, turn it into texture. Turn specular off, it'll help a little bit. And we're going to size this. And I'm not sure which direction it needs to go. Okay. So it needs to go out in this direction. And you would just be scaling it so that it looks appropriate in one direction. And then your texture should be applied correctly. In my opinion, I think what it's doing... No, it's not doing anything special. It's all UV mapped appropriately for the most part. Personally, I like having bigger grains for trees. I like exaggerating them. So in my texture, I wouldn't have it this detailed. I would have like a lot of chunky bark texture going on in just real big chunks so that it does this number. And that way it'll be seamless when you line it up correctly, just like I showed you before. But you could leave it big, I guess. It's really hard to find the seams in these too, so it's not too bad. Something like that. So you probably don't have to use a seamless texture on Y, but on X you would want it seamless. Unless you rotate your UV island. Alright, so yeah. That quick, that easy, done. These guys are textures, remember? We can't apply that material to it or we'll end up with a problem. Fortunately, we have Photoshop. In Photoshop, you open up your branch. And this is real simple. What you do is you leave it as is. We're going to duplicate it. We're going to apply pixel lock. So now with the pixel lock, what we can do is we can grab like an orangish color, grab some brown. Now normally you would want to match your other texture there. So you would use the colors from that. But in this situation, I just want to create a little darker towards here, a little brighter towards out here, maybe a little bit brightness in here. Just kind of make it splotchy. Give it some more orange. Don't get too crazy with it. It doesn't need to be like super dark. But, you know, give it some wood texture. I mean, depending on how detailed you want it. Now I'll set it to overlay. And you'll see that it still preserves the shading for the most part from Blender, which is great. It's actually really awesome. I'm gonna create a new layer. I have concept brushes with a bunch of different foliage brushes, so I can just lay out foliage really quick. Depending on what kind of foliage you want, you would want to download a brush pack for this. Um, and I usually work in really small. For something like this, I'd work with really small ones. I'd exaggerate them a little bit, but not too much. And so maybe I want these to be yellow. I'll just make them pure yellow to start with, just to give you an idea of like how I'm gonna push them in here. I might just do something like this. Nothing crazy. Really nothing crazy. Just gonna tap them in at the tops of the branches. Okay. Real simple, real easy. Make it pretty sporadic. You want these kind of holes in it everywhere. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. You create these like little kind of shapes, these little like um, sad faces or whatever you want to call them. Just these weird kind of organic shapes. Um, Now we can change it to a darker color. Now this brush happens to be a blend brush, so it's going to do a lot more than if it was a regular brush. It's going to actually kind of mix colors together. It's a color mixer brush. So um, it does some pretty interesting things when it comes to creating trees. It works really well. All right. I might make it a little bit bigger and just put some patches in here just to hide some of these limbs. Okay. Some things like this. Maybe make it a little bit more yellow again. I don't want to overdo it though. Okay. Make it really sporadic. And then once again, just like before, we're going to um, pixel lock it. As soon as we got a decent spread. And now we can come in here and just kind of go a little bit crazy with it. Just a tiny bit. We're going to create some interest to a lot of this. You can go all the way down to pure black if you want. And because it's a mixer brush, it's not gonna mix black into it. Okay. And here's the trick. If you got a brush or a pen, a tablet, what I would do personally is use that more than the mouse. You can see clicking works, but I'm gonna make the edges of this brighter, just the edges on the outside here, and I'm gonna use a darker yellow kind of throughout for the most part. And the reason why is it creates the illusion of backlighting. And the backlighting will make it, believe it or not, and then I'll make these a little bit brighter as well on the outside. But that backlighting will make it really look bright, just on the very fringes of the sides here. Keep in mind, we're not doing this to the ones in the middle. We're going to actually darken those a little. Want them to be a little bit more yellow, but not nothing crazy. And then I want them to be darker right up in here. So just very sporadic. Very, very sporadic. Okay. Now, these get lighter right at the tips. All right. What that should do is create the illusion. We just yeah, Control S. We'll save over it. PNG file. Branch 01. That is the right one. Yeah. Okay. And it should create a nice effect here now. So we're going to go to select the branch, open up base color. This is under the materials tab. Click open. See branch 01. We're just going to reload it. Voila. So now we have some dead branches, which I haven't finished texturing, but we also have these ones up here. And you can see that the fringes, the sides of it being brighter, make it a lot nicer, and then the middle's being a little bit darker. So that's really a pretty cool way of doing that. And, you know, if you were to finish, you know, if you were to use actual wood texture for this, that would look even better. And then finish these by making them textured as well. Would look pretty good. And all in all, these have some specular on them, I think. Yeah, they do somewhere. Okay. So it's something in GR. It should look more like that. And it's a pretty skinny, thin tree, but you got to remember a GR character is going to be roughly the size of a cube. Well, I'm pressing all kinds of buttons here, messing it up. Let's go back to solid. So we're going to create cube, go into edit mode, select it, get everything off. Shift Z point, whoop, scale, Shift Z 0.5. Okay. Keep pressing the wrong buttons. So this is our tree. And this would be the collider underneath. So something like that, maybe. We need to line that up a little bit better. Yeah, something like right around there. That should do it. And you know, probably don't even need to do that, but this would be right around there. Okay. Pretty good. Not bad looking. We could certainly take this whole thing. You could combine it together, but I don't think it would be that useful. It is in one collection. The trick here, the collection system doesn't work like groups like you would think. So it's a little bit annoying, but you know, if you want to scale all this at one time, you could use the 3D cursor, or you can assign it to an empty or parent it to an empty. We're just going to use the 3D cursor. We're just going to place it right at the base here. If I can get it on the base. Okay, that's going to be harder than I thought. We're going to just select this bottom piece. Shift S, cursor is selected. Okay. Now we should be able to select all of it. Hopefully we selected all of it. Yeah. We use the 3D cursor. Scale it up or down. I don't know. Duplicate it, scale it down based off the 3D cursor. Rotate it. Oop. I got my origins set different. Go to global, median point, G, Shift Z. Can move it over. Probably would have wanted to duplicate this as well, but for now, let's just move it over. Not too bad. I'm gonna try something here. Oh, move it over more. You don't want to accidentally. You want to be able to select it like this without selecting that. I'm thinking you can use individual or the local individual origins, and you can rotate these just slightly on Z-axis. And it'll create a little variation and hopefully not mess it up. So you shouldn't see any of these branches kind of just sticking out from other or middle of space or empty air. All right, so underneath, these aren't real good for creating shade. They're really sporadic. When you go underneath, it's not going to look that great. The trick here with that, there's two ideas. You can add way more leaves to it. It's going to fill out the tree more. But this would be technically okay for the most part. It's not going to hurt you too bad. The other idea is this kind of setup. We're just going to copy the trunk real quick. This kind of setup, and we're going to take one of these leaves. You could, if you have enough polygons for this, split them twice, okay? And then all you do is you add a little curvature to it, something like that. Bring this down, and then bring this down. Something like that, okay? And then you do that for the other one as well, the empty branch there. Now, when you put these up here, we're going to do this like super fast. When you put these up here, redefine the origin point. And you're going to have to do that. Set origin to 3D cursor. Okay, so now when you put these up here, what'll end up happening is duplicate them. You can rotate them, do some weird numbers with them. You'll see that you get a little bit more coverage out of them when you do it like that. You can even do a trifecta here. You can do this kind of number. Sometimes that's useful. Just building them in a way where they kind of like lay on top of each other, almost, and kind of go into one another. So you get this kind of an effect. Useful info. So now you can grab all three. You can be like, yeah, I want one here. Let's make that one smaller, rotate it. Let's make another one here, rotate it. Let's do another one over here. Whoops, see, it went to that other one. Let's do this number. We'll go down here. I know this is a long tutorial. I did not mean to make this one this long. Just felt like playing around with these would be kind of worth it, kind of showing it off. And so now when you start to look underneath this one, what ends up happening is you don't want to make them too big, but you want to make them big enough that they look real. You get this nice effect that there's a little bit more coverage going on. And that, I think, is the big takeaway there. Because you can really start to pile these in there and get this nice kind of full looking tree effect going. It could be problematic though, because you might run out of polygons really, and GR will start complaining. But we're at 225 faces. I would consider that useful, to the point that you could probably use this and it would be just fine. But that's just another idea. You can shape the foliage a little bit, and you can certainly run these around in other directions too. So instead of having them opposing like that, you can make them. Let's see if I can get it done real quick. If it's going to rotate on that axis, no. Yes, it's, oh, there it goes. Kind of. Let's just rotate it. Free rotation here. So yeah, you can rotate them around. Do that number. You can also do something like this where you make these like little branches kind of collide with one another. This weird roundabout way. So you can see like how that number works. Sometimes that's pretty useful. It gives you real good coverage or canopy look to it, but it's does create kind of a cylinder effect, which yeah, not the best thing in the world. You can always bump one up out of it and do some crossing back and forth like that, which can look pretty good as well. So, it's up to you. It's a little bit of artistic preference and interpretation there. The reason I don't like this though is because if you look right here, you can kind of, you'll be down here, but you can kind of get views on these edges where they become flat. And I really don't like that a lot. And it happens to all of, like pretty much anything is going to do that. Like it happens to these ones, but just trying to avoid that as much as possible is vitally important to create a believable, good-looking tree, anyways. And so yeah, this was a long tutorial. Thanks for sticking around throughout it. This is just one type of tree creation method. I'm going to show off another one, which is actually made to fix that looking up underneath it problem, which is a canopy tree method. It's very similar. Well, it's kind of similar to this, but it's very easy to do, and I'll show you that in another video. But for now, this is it on creating trees, and I'll make another video here on canopy trees later on. All right. Thanks for sticking through it, and I'll see you in the next video.